Hello and welcome. I am King's with MMOplay.com to cover a Ravana quick start guide. Also included is a review for the Dragon King skin for Ao Kuang. I'm going to start with the Ravana guide, but if you would like to skip to the Dragon King skin review, just click that annotation link below. This guide is largely a primer to get all you new Ravana players situated and feeling comfortable with playing this new god, because despite the average difficulty rating, this god is actually quite difficult to use effectively. For at least the first half dozen games with him, I just felt myself getting extremely frustrated just trying to learn the basics of this guy. But don't worry, because I'm here to save you a lot of trouble. Let's start with the skills. Your passive is Chain of Blows. Each successful hit within 5 seconds will add to your combo chain. Prana Onslaught will do an additional 7.5% damage for each hit in the combo, up to a maximum of 60% total damage. Prana Onslaught will do an additional 7.5% damage for each hit in the combo, up to a maximum of 60% total additional damage. Hits on towers don't count, and hits above 8 on the combo gauge will not proc more damage. In other words, each tick of your combo bar will add 7.5% damage to your first skill, up to a maximum of 8, which you'll be able to tell by looking at your combo gauge above your health bar. First ability, Prana Onslaught. Ravana throws a punch, dealing damage and slowing enemies in a cone in front of him. The base damage scales from 60 to 200, plus 75% of your power. The slow scales from 10% to 20%. The mana cost and cooldown is pretty low, so spam away, but really you should get into the habit of only using it when your Chain of Blows combo gauge is at least half full to completely full to get as much damage as you possibly can. As this is a melee god, you have to get very close. Your second ability is Overhead Kick. Ravana kicks a shockwave forward to damage all enemies in a line and making him invulnerable during the animation, which is roughly 3/4 of a second. This ability's damage scales in a similar fashion to Prana Onslaught, but with a much higher mana cost and cooldown, so use sparingly. Also keep in mind that your passive does not affect the skill. The range and damage is unfortunately low, but the skill doubles as utility. For you skilled players, you can time the ability animation to line up with a high damage blow or crowd control ability and completely negate it. But for the rest of us, it can be used for minor damage or for a very minor gap closer to or away from enemies. Your third ability is 10-Hand Shadow Fist. Damages and passes through enemies, rooting the first god hit. Also heals based on damage dealt. The actual damage scaling is quite poor, especially considering your passive does not affect the skill. However, who needs damage when you have utility? While the root is only about a second, that can be enough to finish a fleeing foe or to open up a devastating combo chain. The health return scales at about 5% to a whopping 20% of damage dealt. That's not too shabby. The mana cost and cooldown is very high though, so save it for ideal openings or if you really need that health return. And of course, being a melee champ brings short ranges. You need to get pretty close to use the skill. And of course, the ultimate skill, Mystic Rush. Ravana dashes to the target, damaging them and knocking aside all enemies in his path. The target is then linked to Ravana, dealing full damage to him, while all other enemies do reduced damage for a short time. Whew, talk about an ultimate skill. It's also incredibly handy for an initiating player in particular. First and foremost, this is your primary gap closer or teamfight initiation skill. The damage is pretty low, but the damage gain instead is quite nice. A flat 40% will be all your enemies, aside from your target, will get, or about 3 to 5 seconds anyway. This skill, as you could imagine, costs the most and has the highest cooldown, so be careful of when you use it. But also don't go all game saving it for the perfect opportunity. Pick your battles. The general play guide. That's it for skills, and to wrap it up, I'll give a quick synopsis of the optimal way to use them in an actual game. Experienced players will no doubt figure out better ways to use them over time, but keep in mind this is just a quick start guide. Typically in lane, you ideally want to keep your combo gauge strung along by hitting a minion every 4 seconds or so. If you're up against a 2v1 or a ranged character going in for a lot of a harass, don't bother, it's not worth it. In all the games I've played Ravana, one thing to keep in mind about this god is that he typically comes out ahead late game. Play safe and farm well early, but keep a keen eye out for opportunities. When your enemy makes a mistake, such as getting a bit too low, overstaying, or even going past the minion line, move towards your enemy and then land your third skill to root them. Then follow up with your first skill to proc your combo gauge, which ideally would be around half full or more. Follow up with your second skill for the slow to stay in your target, then continue to pummel them into the ground. Last but not least, your ultimate skill, Mystic Rush. I try to use this skill to gap close after them when they use their escape skill. Don't use this skill first unless you're sure you can get a quick kill or you're initiating for a team fight. To put all that simply, auto attack to build combo, third skill to root, first skill to proc your combo gauge, second skill to slow, and fourth skill to gap close on a fleeing enemy. Generally, as a melee bruiser, stay with and protect squishier teammates while helping defend or attack objectives. You're at your best when your enemy comes to you. Remember to play safe early and scale into the late game. General item build. That's it for skills and general play habits. Now onto a general build guide. My advice for any new Ravanas is to not follow the auto build. Turn it off immediately. I tried the auto build for about 4 games before I started to use my own items out of frustration. The recommended build goes almost, if not entirely, full damage or attack speed. That is maybe how you play an assassin. But Ravana is not assassin, he's a bruiser, which is a moderate sustained damage dealer with a very strong tanky base. How are you going to do sustained damage if you die 3 seconds into a fight? My advice would be go something like Death's Toll and Boots with some HP pots to start. Then Cudgel into either Runeforged Hammer or Frostbound Hammer. They're both great core choices. Frost Hammer gives you that nice slow on faster and more mobile enemies, and in general helps with sticking power, while Runeforged helps protect against a heavy attack damage team. Or hell, I don't know, go both. One hammer for each hand. Upgrade your boots into Ninja Tabi for the movement and attack speed. After that, get Keen Size for the damage. Late game in general, I would recommend going more tanky. Staying alive is the best thing you can do in any MOBA, and Smite is no exception. Pick up Bulwark to keep yourself alive, and fill up your last item or 2 slot with some more damage if you feel you need it, or some utility to round out the build. And on that note, that completes the Ravana Quick Start Guide part of this video. If you have any tips on playing Ravana, please feel free to leave some in the comments. But now onto the Ao Kuang Dragon King skin review. I honestly didn't feel much love for the skin. I can barely even tell the difference, and that's including the side-by-side comparison. I suppose if you love playing this god and everything about it, then maybe you consider picking this skin up, but for everyone else, I would say it is a definite pass. There isn't anything that makes the skin stand out, and in general has a very similar look and feel to the base skin. What I was hoping for when I heard Dragon King skin was a lot of fire red particle effects and maybe even some kind of dragon themed armor or sword. But boy, was I disappointed. This concludes the review of the Dragon King skin and this video in general. If you would like to continue seeing Smite coverage, please drop a comment and or a like to support the video. Thanks for watching.